Welcome back. So now we're on to philosophy of science. That's where our journey next takes us. And we begin that this week in some of your reading in Moreland Craig's book, Philosophical Foundations for a Christian Worldview. I hope you enjoy the reading. It's very, very important. And in that reading, we're going to be looking at, among other things, scientific methodology. So that some introduction to some scientific methods. And that being the case, a term that you're going to need to know or understand a bit about is the term epistemology. It might be new to some of you. Epistemology pertains to knowledge. What is knowledge? How we know what knowledge is. Justifications for making a claim like, I know my car is in the parking lot. Well, how do you know that? What justifies that? So in the realm of science, talking about epistemology, we're talking about how we know something based on science, the scientific endeavor. So the deliverances of science are supposed to provide knowledge, and there's different takes on that, different understandings regarding scientific epistemology. That is, how far and to what extent we can know something based on what science does. And so epistemology, understanding that term, and there's some other terms in there you're going to read carefully. They define them as they go, and they're very specific on what they mean. So please pay attention to that. We're going to talk about an eclectic method of science, and the eclectic method that they propose, it's a pretty good one. So it's something for you to seriously consider and keep in mind what science is and does and what it can and cannot do. And keep in mind their eclectic method of science as you read other materials next week as well, because it becomes a pretty good basis to judge or critique other works, even by Christians, but especially by non-Christians on this matter. A phrase that you're going to be coming up with next week in particular, but if you read other materials, is the phrase and the concept of methodological naturalism. Next week it's going to be in the reading, but methodological naturalism is the view that the methods of science need to presuppose basically no God, okay? We have to presuppose just the naturalistic outworkings of life for determining cause and effect here in the universe. Some Christians apply this in their scientific endeavor, and what happens is you begin with the viewpoint, basically, that God is not at work in the universe. Even if you hold to God, there's a view, it's a view of approach to science, that the methods that we use end up being just naturalistic in life, that all that happens is naturalistic in its performance, even if God exists. So you want to be very careful with identifying that view and that presupposition that presupposes something. Namely, that God's not at work or can't be at work, or that we have to come up with a basis for a conclusion without God in our science. And so right there, you've discounted some theology and a relationship with God in our deliverance of science. So that has an effect. Also, whenever you talk about science or philosophy of science as Christians, it always comes back to Galileo. And you've probably done some reading on that. I hope you have. But in case you haven't, you need to. Any discussion on science and religion ends up covering Galileo and the church and what happened then. And there's 2 articles I've posted for you on this issue. The first one is by Dixon, and he gives kind of a general overview, background information, and some realism, anti-realism issues that may come into play regarding the church and Galileo. And you're going to be reading about realism and anti-realism this week as well. Pay attention to that. It might be a surprise to you to realize that there are people who are realists and anti-realists in the scientific realm. And there's a second article by Galli and Olson, who make more specific observations regarding Copernicus and Galileo in particular. So I've posted that for you. They're not really articles, they're portions from books. One's photocopied, one's I just copied right out of it. I have given all credence to them, though, all credit. Interact with those on Blackboard as well. And we will see you Tuesday night or be back in class on Tuesday night. God bless each and every one of you.